Welcome to the Profitable Farmer Podcast, where it's all about increasing the profitability of your farm by working smarter, not harder.
Welcome again to Profitable Farmer. I hope you're all incredibly well. I've been looking forward to this interview for a long time. And who would have thought, Sam Pincott, that we'd be sitting here doing a podcast? I grew up, Sam Pincott and the Pincott family are wonderful friends to our family. And so I grew up as a kid water skiing over at Galore with Sam and Bill and Marg and Ange. And we regard the Pincott family as some of our closest friends. And I know my older brother and Sam's elder brother were best mates all through school and uni. So it's really pleasing for me to have a chat with Sam in this podcast. Sam and his wife, Prue, and their 4 amazing girls have an amazing story that I'm really excited to share. And it speaks to a couple of things for me, and we'll get into this. But so many of us in farming businesses do the same thing over and again. Our business models are like they have been, and we don't often pioneer and innovate around the business model that sits with our farm and that sets us up to succeed. And what I love about what Sam and Prue have achieved is they've moved from conventional farming or a traditional approach to something that is truly unique and pioneering, and it's a wonderful story. So I'm looking forward to sharing that. And just to you as a listener, I love the concept that doing the same thing over and again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And so what we also believe is that it's our business model that sits on top of our farm that sets us free. And we've got to actually do a lot of critical thinking and a lot of soul searching and a lot of strategic work as leaders in our businesses to come up with a business model that can achieve for us what it is that we want in life. And for me, the Holbrook Paddock Eggs story is just a fantastic example of that. So, ladies and gents, it's great for me and a lot of fun, Sam, to introduce you to Profitable Farmer. Welcome.
Thanks, Hutch. Thank you. Great to be here. It's that's a great intro. Thank you. Certainly, we go back a long way, don't we? Had a lot of fun over the years. We've I sort of feel I've followed in your footsteps a little bit, Hutch, through as you say, skiing up and down the river to boarding school to traipsing over to England, around Europe. We go back a long way. So thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure, mate. It's great to have you. Now, do you still have a pair of Dunlop volleys for water skiing?
No, look, they might be at the bottom of the bidgie by now. Yeah, geez, I don't think I've quite got that in me anymore, Hutch. But they were good days.
For those of you that like water skiing, the Pincotts just are amazing. They used to have the boat just pitched at the bottom of their garden and would sneak in for a lunch break and have a ski, but used to always strap on the Dunlop volleys just in case there were anything floating down the river. But lots of fun memories, Sam. How do you reflect on growing up by the river at Galore, at Riverton?
Look, it was a great childhood. There's no doubt about it. A lot of fun times, great memories. That river's a special place, and really nice to see, my brother Bill and his family and his kids getting that same enjoyment out of it that what we did as kids. It was. I had a great childhood, Hutch. Went away to boarding school for 6 years, so there's a big chunk of it where you are away, but it was always a special place to come back to.
Yeah. So, Sam, the Holbrook Paddock story, Holbrook Paddock Eggs story, sorry. Did you ever predict that you would be where you are today?
No, absolutely not. And even really, Hutch, even when we started with the chooks, if you'd said to us 6 months prior, that we're going to go into a poultry enterprise, we would have laughed you out of town. That was certainly wasn't ever in the plan. Wasn't our desire. We'd both had a few chooks in backyards growing up on our respective farms as kids, and had a few in our own backyard at the time. But no, I guess it was really born out of necessity and creativity. We were in a bit of a tough position, and something had to change. We had to look outside the square. So, and really, I give a lot of that credit to Prue because she's got a far more creative mind than I do. So no, look, it wasn't in the plan, but it's a business that has just evolved over. Now we've been going for nearly 12 years, and it's just evolved to where it is today.
You're an amazing team, you and Prue, and I have sincerely enjoyed watching the journey, Sam, as a friend and over that journey as a business coach to you and Prue. And I just think, the approach that you've taken and where you've arrived to, it's amazing, and you can both be, and I'm sure you are, very proud of what you've achieved.
Yeah, thanks, Hutch. We are proud, and it's one of those cases that it is important to stop and reflect sometimes, because we get carried away in just our day-to-day running and where we're at. But there has been, over the years, a couple of significant points where we have stopped and looked back and, patted ourselves on the back, which has been nice to be able to do.
As you say, Sam, it's not something that we normally or naturally do, is stop and reflect and look backwards and celebrate the achievements, do we?
No, and I remember you saying that, Hutch, when we were using you as a coach, that the Americans are very good at celebrating and acknowledging their successes, and we in Australia seem to take that as arrogance. But I've never forgotten you mentioning it, and I think it really is an important part of life to stop and reflect and enjoy what you've done, and it's okay to celebrate that with people near and around you, your support team. It's important.
Yeah. So Sam, before we get into the backstory, how would you describe Holbrook Paddock Eggs today? Can you just give our listeners a sense of what the business achieves and who you supply and the team, and a snapshot of your current reality?
Yeah, sure. So Holbrook Paddock Eggs is a portable-based free-range egg business. We're located, obviously, Holbrook, southern New South Wales, on the Hume Highway, pretty well midway between Melbourne and Sydney. We run a total of 15,000 birds on the farm, which includes our replacements that we buy in as day-old chicks. So out of that 15,000, we bank on about 10,000 laying for us at any one time. We supply 80% of the eggs go to Sydney, and the other 20% regionally around the southwest slopes, really. Wagga, Albury, Holbrook is, for a small town, supports us tremendously well. We're forever grateful for them. I guess our market is that we're sort of in a niche market with a staple product. Our customer base is largely want to know the story behind what we're producing, and the story, the welfare, the ethics are far more important to them than actual price. Price will come into it at some point, but our customers they're wanting to know more of the backstory about the product, like they are with a lot of their perishables that they're buying.
Who are your resellers in Sydney, for example? Is it gourmet supermarkets? Is it butchers? Who do you typically supply? Canberra, Sydney.
Yeah, so we're just in Sydney now. We used to go to Canberra, but we've dropped Canberra off. So our typical customer there's a lot of small private gourmet delis, fruit and veggie shops, butcher shops, restaurants make up a very small part of our book. The chefs want the product, but they always struggle to pay the price, and that's fine. Happy with that. We're in the line of Metro stores, which are Woolworths owned. That's their high-end line, plus the Harris Farm Market stores too in Sydney and Albury. So generally, it's that top end or higher end market that we have our most success in.
And how real is the provenance piece for you? Like, there's a lot of intrigue, I think, and I guess a lot of people in our industry thinking about marketing direct. You mentioned the story and the ethics being important. How real's that from your perspective?
For us, it's 100%. It's we don't have a marketing background at all, Prue and I, but we've over the years, especially when we were starting, we took on all roles of the business, and we very quickly worked out our marketing strategy. Was we had to sell our story first, and that story is how we're producing the eggs in the paddock in a portable system. Sell that story. Then we sell a dozen eggs. We've got 100% faith in the quality of the eggs. It's going to back up the story that we've sold. And then we get a repeat buy. So it's a very simple, short marketing strategy. But without that story at the forefront, we're just another product on the shelf. So that's what we have spent and still do, spend a lot of time just selling that story. So for us in our niche market, essentially, it's very important.
Such a great comment, Sam. So from a professional service perspective, so as a coach or as an accountant or financial planner, I've heard it said that we've got to set people buy us first, and then they buy our story, and then they buy what we do. And it's so interesting to hear that that's true in your experience selling eggs just as equally as it is selling something like accounting or law or finance. Yeah. But it makes perfect sense.
And Hutch, that story, it's powerful across all demographics too. I mean, I say that our market is that sort of higher end, end of town, which it is for the majority of them. But we still sell into some stores in pretty low socioeconomic suburbs. That amazes me how many eggs that we sell there in a week. And I think it purely comes back to, that customer in that suburb mightn't have a lot of disposable money, but they're choosing very wisely where they're wanting to spend it. And for certain products, they're gonna hold their values very true to themselves.
I think people, and they sort of, I've heard it said that the next generation in particular are very conscious about who they transact with. And I've heard the frame philanthropic consumers, that we're being philanthropic almost in how it is that we're choosing what we buy. So if we're going to go and buy a pair of sunglasses, we buy the pair of sunglasses that there is a story behind or a charity behind. It might be, fixing eyesight in third world Africa. The next generation are consciously buying the sunglasses that make them feel good for making an impact. And I can only think that the provenance piece links to that people like knowing and value quality, but also want to know that what they're consuming has been ethically and responsibly provided. And
from a farmer's point of view, primary producer's point of view, it's a really exciting space to be in. We get numerous feedbacks throughout a week, throughout a month. People either picking the phone up and ringing or sending us a comment through the website, which just amazes me that people actually stop and take the time to give us comments, on all levels of the scale about an egg that they've just sat down and eaten. But without that feedback, we can't tweak our model. But it's such valuable feedback that we're getting on our product. It's not like we're hearing or reading feedback on free range eggs as a commodity. It's direct feedback on Holbrook Paddock Eggs as a product. And so without that story to tell, it just makes it so much more valuable, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
And I appreciate that the quality of what you create is significant. It's better than a caged animal but ultimately it is a commodity. How important is that story as your point of difference? You've entered a market, if you like, where there's just an abundance of competition, an abundance of other suppliers of the same product. How significant is the story in setting you apart and allowing you to open up new markets?
It's hugely significant. Without it, we are just another product on the shelf that would just be compared on price alone, probably. A big part of our story that has come through legislation is the stocking density of free-range eggs. There's been a lot of debate over this over the last decade, and that now has to be put on our carton, which is highly valuable. And I don't expect the consumer to visualise or understand exactly what that density means, but they've got the ability to look at a number on a carton, and it could be anything from 10,000 birds a hectare, where 40 birds a hectare. Again, it's not the for me, it's not them understanding exactly what that looks like, but if welfare and production methods and things are part of their decision making and how they're going to spend their well-earned dollar, well, then they can go down the line of shelves and see some variation in numbers and make their decision. And then, it's up to us to sell more of our story to help people make that decision.
How do you do that in Harris Farm or in macro? How do you actually get your story across? What's an example of how the storytelling and the provenance actually arrives to the consumer?
Yeah, so we've again, no marketing background, so we paved the pavement pretty hard there for a while in the early days. I spent a lot of time getting very thick-skinned, standing in supermarkets, scrambling eggs into shot glasses on a Saturday morning, and just trying to offer customers to taste what eggs can taste like. It's a very unsexy product to sell, I can tell you. But I didn't want to manipulate the product, but I just wanted to be able to grab a consumer and end consumers. Literally, I had a 30-second script that I would reel off as fast as I could, just with some really concise points. And that's how we got our brand established in the market. So I used to go to Sydney a lot doing that, and I dreaded it. It wasn't my happy place. People are walking in to do their quick shopping. They don't want to be stopped by some goof wearing a cowboy hat trying to sell a dozen eggs to them. But I was lucky. People, there was a percentage of the market that stopped and listened, and then started asking some really valuable questions. That we then, we upped the ante through a website. We sell a little story on the inside carton, on the lid of the egg carton now, just telling them a little bit about what we do, how we do it. We run basic social media pages, that side of things. But it has been about physically getting that story out there, and rightly or wrongly, to begin with, we just stood in people's way and told the story.
And if there are people listening that are thinking about moving away from just taking their commodity to the auction, to the market, down to the silos, whatever, and actually stepping into a niche and going direct, how could you have done this without building out a skill set in both sales, as you've just spoken about, and marketing?
Look, I guess it depends the base that you're coming from. We were coming from a very low base. We didn't have really too many spare dollars at the time of starting this, which is where it was born from, really. So we couldn't afford to go and engage any specialist in this area. So we had to do it ourselves. So I guess if you're in the position that you could engage the right skill set, would make a big difference. But I guess it can be done. We've done it.
How much better are you at marketing now than you were 13 years ago?
Oh, I'd like to think I'm a lot better. Again, it's still a challenging space for me. But we're very fortunate that we've got the brand to a position where we get the inquiries coming to us now. So I haven't had to stand in that supermarket scrambling eggs for a number of years now, and it's a nice place to be at. But I think we were fortunate. Timing was on our side in this area. And there's that growing population that's very well educated that want to know answers around that provenance, and we've been able to have a product that fits right into that space. So, but look, the skill set certainly has improved over the time.
I might be a bit more direct on this than that, if I could. I think, and we talk as business coaches around, it's 50% about what you do, and it's 50% around how well you sell it to the marketplace. And most of us are great at what we do, but we suck at marketing. And that's the thing I think that holds us back. And so if there are farmers listening that are thinking about going direct, building out your own marketing skill set's just so important. You can, get a marketer in to do that for you. That's part of it perhaps, but I would encourage those of you listening and I've had a chat to a few just in this last few weeks, I would really encourage you to go and invest heavily in building out your marketing ability, perhaps so that you can achieve what Sam and Prue have even more quickly. Who knows? Sam, if you hadn't really invested in your own marketing skill at the outset, do you think that would have sped things up a bit?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I guess too, a big part of this for us is that I'm sure part of our success has come because the end consumer's seen and heard it directly from us. It hasn't been a shiny marketing team that's just been engaged. Yeah. There's a lot of, I guess, genuineness about the owner-operator standing up there, being at the farmers market, trying to get a brand out there initially, every Saturday morning at 6 o'clock. Like, there's a lot of respect that we gain by doing it ourselves. But yeah, look, there's, and you helped us a lot in this space, Hutch, on getting that skill set and building what our scripts needed to be. Like, I didn't even know that we needed a script to begin with. But there's certainly a clever and more smarter way of going about it and approaching it than just rocking up with your product and putting it on a table. Yeah, and we did put a lot of focus on that in the early days.
But Sam, 10,000 eggs a day.
Yeah, not quite. We've got 10,000 layers. We get about 7,500, 8,000 eggs a day out of them. Yep.
So how do you physically get those in boxes and away? Tell me a bit about the team that you have and that you've built, and also about what practically happens with those chooks in those mobile sheds on the farm following the cattle around. Can you just give us a sense of the enterprise stacking and the team that helps you get it done?
Yeah, sure. So there's 10 of us on the books, Holbrook Paddock Eggs, and that is a range of full-time employees on the farm. There's 2 full-time on the farm, through to some casual staff collecting eggs on the weekend, to some permanent part-time packers, graders and packers in our egg packing facility. So you look at daily routine. Hutch is 2 people head out to the paddock in the ute, piled up with in the back under a canopy. There's about 50 odd milk crates with 5 egg trays in it that you put 30 eggs in a tray at a time. And our portable sheds, we've got communal nest boxes, so we can just stand at each shed's got 2 collecting points where we stand, and there's a conveyor belt, and we can just bring the eggs to us in one spot. So it takes, we start at 8 o'clock collecting, and we're into the packing shed in Holbrook by 11:30. So it's not a huge time commitment, but it's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And from there, they get stored in a cool room in the packing shed, and 3 days a week, the permanent part-timers come in and grade and pack those eggs. So, and we'll basically just pack into, dozen cartons, half dozens, or 30 tray catering packs. A lot of that's done to order. So we know our orders at the beginning of the day. We dispatch generally once a week to everywhere. So Mondays is our big day in the packing shed to get orders collated and dispatched for Sydney that afternoon. That'll hit a shelf in Sydney on Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning. So, and that's a big part about our story is freshness of the product. So we're wanting them out, excuse me, as quickly as we can. Yep. And then the sheds get moved in the paddock. We move them minimum once a week. So that's an afternoon job. It's really just like hooking onto a trailer with a tractor and moving them forward. We've got 19 sheds out in the paddock. Age group, we always got 5 age groups out in the paddock at any time. They're kept separate so that the flocks don't mix. And then when an age group has done its time and we've got the young flock about to come in as a replacement out of our brood shed, then we depopulate that group, and those birds generally end up in the backyard market. So people that just want half a dozen chooks at home, we don't deal direct with many people. I deal direct with any locals that are wanting some chooks at home, but otherwise I've got a couple of gentlemen that come and buy them in there. They'll come and pick up 500 one evening and distribute them around the the district, the community, in 6s and 10s, and I don't want that hassle. But it's an important part that we need to get rid of them somewhere. So I'm grateful for those guys.
Thanks, Sam. So about 25 minutes ago, Sam, you mentioned that if 6 months before you started Holbrook Paddock Eggs, if someone had have told you that you were going to be in the egg business, you wouldn't have believed them. If that's the case, how did Holbrook Paddock Eggs come to be? Like, would you mind giving us the backstory that arrived you to having a crack at this and getting started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess backstory is I grew up on a mixed broadacre cropping and basically sheep farm, few cattle between Wagga and Narrandera. Prue grew up north of Melbourne near Yea on a sheep and cattle property. And so we'd both had that ag influence growing up, and both had an interest that's where we wanted to be in our career. Prue's a nurse as well, and is still nursing locally at Holbrook, but was also wanting to be heavily involved in an agricultural business with me. So I guess having done various jobs and working different places and managing a cattle place down at Camperdown, we had the opportunity to lease Prue's family property. Her father was unwell at the time, and we had the opportunity to go back there, which was a fantastic start for us. Mum and Dad had begun their succession plan, so that enabled us to buy some livestock and make a start for ourselves, which was fantastic. We soon realised, though, that the Yea property was very much Melbourne real estate. It was 40 minutes to the edge of town then, be only closer now. And Prue's got 3 other siblings. Her father had subsequently died, and we knew that we weren't ever going to be in the position to take that property on for ourselves. So we started looking around for another opportunity, I guess, and which led us to buying a block just north of Holbrook. And so cattle was our main focus. We had a breeding herd. We got into some trading, and that was where the focus was. And we had taken on a large amount of debt to buy the Holbrook property, and we're running the two in conjunction. So we were still living at Yea. Yea was a far more productive block, beautiful property, very well set up. And I was commuting up to Holbrook, and then we did the flip. I think our second daughter was born, and after that we moved to Holbrook, and that was 2008. And I was then going back and forth to Yea, and it was a big ask, but it was working well. And it was, we had come through, or we were in the midst of the millennium drought, which hit the Yea property pretty hard, and so that had certainly played a toll. I was finding it mentally pretty hard just having started and was suddenly just in that drought feeding mind space, let alone the fact any finance reserves was being chewed up pretty quickly with supplementary feeding in containment lots. But it was working it was okay. And then unfortunately in 2009, the Yea property was completely burnt out in the Black Saturday bushfires. We saved both the houses, but the rest of the property was burnt. And so I guess, to cut that story short, Hutch, once the property was recovered and re-fenced and everything was sort of back to where it needed to be, Prue's family decided to sell that property, which was by far the best decision for Prue's mother and the family in general. A big decision for the family, but that was what was made, and it was fine. But it just meant from Prue's and my end, we had taken on this debt commitment to buy the Holbrook property, and the Yea property was a contributing factor to servicing that debt. So we were suddenly in a pretty tight spot, and I guess that's where creativity steps in. We had recognised too that we were wanting to try and drop some inputs out and grow grass cheaper for cattle, And the notion that we'd come across through changing our grazing management fitted that. It fitted our values and principles. We had worked out that we didn't want to be farming anymore in a high input, high stocking rate system. And again, that was just a personal decision, nothing against the system, just that was what we had identified for ourselves. I still remember we had heard about the idea of using animals as tools and as layers, and the concept of running chooks out in the open paddocks and following cattle or sheep or other animals around and using their manure and scratching and foraging habits as a way of improving the soil. And it had struck a chord with both of us once we'd heard it, and we'd talked about it for probably 12 months, and especially after the fires had gone through and we were sort of just in property repair mode there. We sort of were thinking we've got to do something different here, otherwise we're going to be a casualty within agriculture. We're not going to survive. So one evening, sitting by the fire, there was in the local paper, there was an old caravan advertised, and which Prue saw, and we rang and discovered it was about 20 minutes through the bush from us, an old unregistered caravan. So we got it, dragged it home, gutted it, pulled the double bed out hutch and put some perches and nest box in, and started with 50 chooks. And it was very much a trial phase. It was just, can we grow more grass for the cattle without a whopping big fertiliser bill, because we didn't have a lot of money to pay for a big fertiliser bill.
So then, Sam, it was more about more cost effectively having a cattle enterprise.
Absolutely. The number one driver, initially was soil health, growing more grass for the cattle without a big fertiliser bill. Yeah.
Go on, sorry.
No, I was going to say, look, we could see we started June 2010, and given the time of year that we started, we could see very quickly in a very small area of what 50 chooks were doing that we were growing, phenomenal volume of grass. The quality was amazing. That first year we saw different species return that we hadn't seen in those areas in our short time there, but it was different to the other areas of the property. So it gave us confidence that, we could grow more grass this way, but 50 chooks weren't going to do it for us. So we need to scale up if that's what we're going to do. That's where the journey started, really.
So from that first caravan, how big a step was that first shed and then the second shed? I sort of seem to remember working with you guys as the business coaches. You were building out the sheds and making those significant investments at that time. How big were some of those early growth steps, Sam?
Oh, they were massive, because we didn't have a bank balance to support growth of much then. So we made the decision to trade out of some cattle and build our first couple of sheds. So I think we went from 50 chooks to 700, which just seemed like a massive step at the time. And I guess we had to rewind just a little bit. With 50 chooks, we had more eggs than what we could handle or give away to neighbours. So that's where we thought we'd have a little bit of fun and come up with a brand and a sticker. And we used to sit in front of the fire in the evenings and stick stickers onto blank egg cartons. And that's where Holbrook Paddock Eggs came about. And we wanted to give the community some ownership in the product, so hence the name Holbrook. We wanted to try and distinguish ourselves away from general free range, because that debate was really getting some traction as to what did constitute free range. So we wanted the word paddock in there. And we went to our local butcher, and who was a great supporter of local anything at the time, and explained to him what we were doing. And he said, I'll buy them and put them on my counter, and we'll see how they go. And I remember driving home, having dropped our first 15 dozen eggs, which you put 15 dozen in a standard box, thinking that, feeling pretty proud, to be honest, just thinking, wow, well, there you go, little Holbrook Paddock Eggs, off we go, having no idea where I was going to head at that stage. And as I was dreaming down the highway in my little single cab Navara, I was overtaken by a B-double of Pace Farm Eggs truck, absolutely loaded to the hilt. There would have been thousands of dozens in there. And I thought, back in your box. It's a long way to go. But the most encouraging thing from that delivery was out of 15 dozen, I think we received 6 phone calls that week from locals that we didn't necessarily know, just asking what we were doing, because the quality of the egg was something that they hadn't really experienced before, and it was something we hadn't picked up on. We had taken it for granted. And yeah, we pretty quickly worked out the fact that they were always on green grass, or at that stage it was green grass, always being replenished their diet, because we were moving them. They weren't on a moonscape dirt floor like a lot of even farm chooks end up on. That was putting something special into the eggs. So we needed more chooks to fertilise the country to grow more grass for the cattle enterprise, which was core business at that point. But we suddenly realised that we had a product that people were interested in. So it gave us confidence to continue to grow.
How is it to reflect on the story or the journey now, Sam? And what is it that you're most proud of, having navigated what is, we're cutting to the chase, really. There's been so many amazing growth steps, challenges, learnings. What are you and Prue most proud of?
For me, I'm proud that we've stuck to our guns. Like we did have a lot of knockers sort of in the background. We were doing something very different. We didn't have the shiny new tractor, or we'd stepped out of our sort of comfort spot with cattle that we'd loved. So we could see the value in the business, and it really excited us. And I think so. I'm probably proud that we've stuck to our passion in one sense. I remember having a pretty uncomfortable conversation with a state manager from one of the banks at the time, who came out, and I was trying to explain what we were wanting to do, and he just looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "If you want to put chook shit on your paddock, Sam, just go and buy it out of conventional sheds and grow more grass that way." But what he didn't get at the time was that that's not what we wanted to do. We suddenly had a real passion and drive for farming the way that we wanted to, and what we've since done, that we've stuck to our guns, and we've got there. We got through the tough time, and we've come out the other side. So I think for me, that's what I'm most proud about, is that we've stuck to what we want to do.
How much criticism and pushback and even negativity have you had to navigate, Sam, over that journey from, even friends and, people within your immediate community to others? How has that been, and how have you navigated that?
I'd be lying if I said it's been easy. It hasn't been. We've had some tremendous support, and today I feel we got great support. But earlier on, it was pretty tough. It was pretty lonely. I still have shudders down my spine at being out at a social event in Wagga, and this bloke that I considered not a close mate but a mate just came up, and he literally just laughed in my face and said, "You got into chooks," and before I could answer, he walked off. And I just remember being in absolute, I was just in disbelief. I thought this is back at schoolyard sort of stuff, but it was that. There's egos, and I will stepping outside the box that that fella obviously clearly didn't like, and sadly, that was the extreme. But we copped a fair bit of sort of flack, but again, I guess we made it, turned into fire in our belly, and just we knew that that's what we wanted to do, and we learned that that's all that really mattered. But I'd be lying if it didn't hurt at the time, though. It certainly did.
So many people have an opinion, or are happy to share their opinion of something, and that is just their opinion at the end of the day, isn't it? But it's hard to not take that on at times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess as a mate and a sort of spectator and advocate, and even a coach to you guys over that time, Sam, I just want to acknowledge the courage that you guys have always shown, the way in which you've gone about building this business and leading your team. But probably even more than those two things, the persistence and the resilience that you guys have shown to navigate that fire event down in Victoria, and then this startup project and all of that criticism, you've been unconventional and pioneering, and to see what you guys have achieved through that resilience and that persistence, and to see you celebrating that and enjoying it today for what it is. I just think it's an absolutely incredible story. And, it's just been wonderful to watch what you and Prue and your team and family have achieved over that time.
I appreciate that, Hutch. Thank you. And look, it's without doubt you played a pivotal role in our early stages there, keeping us on the straight and narrow and full of encouragement and just some really core principles and guidance that we needed at that time. So, we owe a lot of it to you too. So thank you.
Oh, mate, my pleasure. I think you were doing the hard yards, but it's wonderful to have been a small part of. So thank you for that. Hey, I heard you say something the other day that I wanted to pick up on. And if we come back to business, and it's all been business really, but just the mechanics of business. Most farmers, when they go to sell their farm, they sell the land. And the enterprise that happens to sit on top of that land has no value in the way in which we value farmland. What I love, and I heard you mention before, one of the things that you're now, as I understand, trying to achieve is to create a business that sits on top of your farm that has value in and of itself, that at some stage might be something that could be sold in addition to the land. And, whether you do or not, that doesn't matter. But I'd love for you to speak, if you could, to your thought process now around creating a business that has value in and of itself. Would you mind just touching on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we recognised pretty early on when Holbrook Paddock Eggs was getting a bit of traction, I guess, was that it was a completely separate business or different business model to what we'd been farming before, and that it is exactly that. It's a separate business. It's a business that could be relocated. It could be sold with the property. It could be sold on its own. So that became very appealing. We don't have a huge scale of land, and so for us, there's been huge value in building the business to be a standalone business, because I think that is, as you said, in agriculture, that's often missed. That you just sell the farm, you don't sell the business with it. So I feel we have got ourselves into a position that, if and when, that I would like to hope that we have got a business that can be sold separately. And for us, it is about getting some systems and mechanics in place that, you can literally pick this business up and move it somewhere else.
Do you think that's something that other or every farmer could aspire to?
I think it's an area in agriculture that could definitely be developed. Absolutely. And I guess you even look at a lot of succession plans. A lot of it is just based on land asset or assets that's there to be distributed. But there's quite often, if one member of the family is going to continue the business, like there should be value in that business too, because that's a massive component of what we do. So I think there's definitely there's room in agriculture for this notion to be developed.
Yeah, I think it's so accurate, Sam. If you think about a corporate farm, they've got a system that gets a result that has value in addition to the land that they happen to operate. And there's often a lease charge between whoever it is that owns the land and whoever it is that operates the business on that land. I think of it crudely a bit like an accounting firm or a butcher's shop in town, that they have premises and they rent the premises, and then there's a business that over their journey in business as an accountant or a physio or a butcher, that their focus is purely on driving value in the business that rents the premises. And I actually think this is a really important way for us to think about our farms. And I was speaking at a farm group the other day, and I asked them if they had to pay themselves a commercial wage, let's say 120 grand to be farm managers, and pay a full rent back to the landowners, how profitable would their business be? And I actually think that it would be a great way that we do look at farms, that, the farm has to do those two things, and then perhaps succession, as you touched on, could be more achievable if we think about creating value in the business that does the farming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's something that, with land values doing what they're doing around the country, it might come to the forefront a little bit quicker, maybe.
And Sam, what's the future look like for you and Prue now? So what aspirations do you have for Holbrook Paddock Eggs? Do you see it continuing to expand? What's the vision that you have for the business from here?
Great question, Hutch. So market-wise, we know we could continue to expand. For us to expand, it's going to require another quantum leap in capital investment, which certainly the door's not closed on. But we've been very happy just with the position that the business is in for the last couple of years, just to not take the foot off the pedal at all, but not just constantly load ourselves up with pressure. So the business is in a great place right now. The immediate focus is going to be on building a tourism retail sort of aspect to the egg enterprise, and we're going to do that out of within Holbrook, out of a new packing facility. That really excites me. It's a new challenge. It's a new focus. We can continue to share our story with what we're doing without having people break biosecurity rules and regulations that we've got to operate on by going out on farm. So that for me is an expansion in itself, and just it's a great mind stimulator for me to be focusing on another area. I've done a tourism mentorship program in the last 12 months, and again, it's good for the mind. Do something a little bit different. We've touched on this with you in the past, Hutch, but both Prue and I have always had a desire to have other interests, out of farming. So it's not necessarily about just buying more land. It's about getting involved in other businesses and using our learnings, I guess. Could be any business, doesn't matter what it is, but that's more where we see ourselves wanting to focus on. I don't know what that is. I don't know, how many opportunities that'll be, but that's where we want to focus on, probably more so. And have Holbrook Paddock Eggs just keep doing what it's doing for us.
Yeah, and so I love that, Sam. And a lot of people think that we've just got to keep growing in the business that we're in, but we can scale, can't we, through a diversification, and we can scale outside agriculture just as actively as we can inside agriculture. So It's great to hear that from you. So I love the fact, Sam, that we had that conversation about 3 years ago, I think, and you mentioned that, if I happen to stumble upon any opportunities that you and Prue were interested. And I know our team at Farm Owners Academy has been delighted to invite you into our team to be a business coach to our farming community. And 12 months into that, mate, just loving having you part of our coaching team and seeing you bring all that you bring to your clients within Farm Owners Academy, but the entrepreneurial business story that you get to share with them, I think, inspires them to, really ask better questions and challenge, their approach to how they're doing farming. So, mate, it's great having you part of our coaching team.
Yeah, well, thanks, Hutch. I'm really enjoying it. And I had one of the members actually at the deep dive the other day he just said, why? Like, why are you doing it? Like, what's, I think probably looking at from, you've got your own farming business, and really for me, it comes back to that stimulation. It's something different. I can step out of Holbrook Paddock Eggs for, a couple of hours each week and do some FOA stuff, and I'm loving it. It's really enjoyable. So, and it's a real privilege. It's a real privilege to, look inside other people's businesses and see what's working and where the challenges are. And it's just attracting such a great group of people. So you can't help but enjoy being part of it.
Yeah, it's a pretty special project. But Sam, I know I'm really pleased to be able to share your backstory, because I think our community's been really keen to hear it, and we'll get so much from it. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it, Hutch. It's been great.
So, Sam, I'm willing to wager that we've got quite a few listeners who are interested to move away from either conventional farming or growing just a commodity to looking at doing something that might be of a higher quality and in a niche, or even direct marketing and really sort of calling on their story to be their point of difference. What I think it's wonderful that we've got so many farming families looking at a direct approach or a niche approach. And I think it's such good strategy to be exploring that. What would you say to people who are probably where you were 13 or 12 or 11 years ago and just making their first steps in that direction? What would be your reflection and your comment to them, just to give them a shot in the arm as they go about what they're doing?
Look, I think foremost, it sounds pretty obvious, but just make sure you know your numbers. Like it's a nice concept, this, going direct and following the product right through. Sadly, there's a lot of skeletons down the road through it. So know your numbers and value your time. Like, you've got to put a value on your own time, because it is intense. It's constant. It's you can't just be there one day and not the next. Your brand won't survive. So just be so clear on your numbers and making sure that there's a satisfactory margin there. It's not about just discounting to sell a product. It's about making money. So you've got to just know your numbers. Can't say it enough.
Yeah, it's a great point, Sam. But and I think Sam and Prue are an example, I've touched on this, but with courage and with resilience and with persistence, look what can be achieved. I think, as I said at the start, Sam, Holbrook Paddock Eggs is such an inspiring story. I'm so confident that so many of our listeners will have got so much from this, no matter where they are on this journey. So to you and Prue, congratulations again, mate, and thank you so much for sharing your story.
Terrific, Hutch. Thanks for having me.
Have you got a final comment, mate, to send us on our way?
Oh, look, you got me on the hop there. Look, probably it sounds very cliche, but just be true to yourself. Just be true to your values. We've stepped outside of probably how we, the conventional businesses that we were brought up in and we loved and admire and still do. But if you're not happy or you want to do something different, be true to yourself and have the courage to do it. Pretty corny way to end, Hutch.
What a great comment. Thank you, Sam. What an amazing story. So I love the fact that Sam and Prue have just been so pioneering. I've got to see firsthand, as I said, their resilience and their persistence. A whole lot of adversity financially in the early stages, and, being courageous enough to cut a new path and to take a very unique and compelling and pioneering approach to how they run their farm. I hope that serves as inspiration and conviction for those of you wanting to do farming your own way and true to who you are. And I want to encourage you to do that. As Sam said in closing there, just really do things that float your boat, that you're passionate about, and that can see you make a difference in what it is that you're doing in your farms. I guess the closing comment from me on this one also is just what an amazing family team Sam and Prue are. They've got incredible strengths. They complement each other and support each other amazingly well. And together, they've created something that is really significant and that allows them to have some relative freedom, but is also providing something very unique and very special to their market. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I look forward to any feedback that you have. And to those of you looking at going beyond commodity production to niche and direct marketing, I hope that serves as inspiration. Take care, guys. Thank you. And bye for now.